besides theological education, we have heard church and mission, we have heard public education of leaders, different models of education, witness to local and global, mission-minded education, church-focused education, flexibility, formation of people, needs of leaders and students, faithful servants that are needed, working together, opportunities. I think especially we heard in the last presentation a lot about seeing the opportunities that God opens up in our particular context for Christians and Christian education. And more. I saw 3 hands. Can we start? Yeah, okay. Yes, please.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for your input. It was really interesting. But I mean, in connected with what Greg shared, about educating the lay leaders and the professionals, I have an extreme example in Albania. There was a man, a great believer, great man of God, and he was a position, I say not a mayor, above mayor, because the mayor is above the city, and he was the position of taking care of all these streets, around. And at some point he moved out to being a pastor of a small church, and I'm getting a small salary and hardly providing for his family. To me this was like taking a lion out there and put in a cage. And it's a great case study for me, for a great paper. For what you shared, Greg, I'm opening our schools of theology to those professionals, lay leaders, and I think this will be a great opportunity. I think we are doing our school of theology in Tirana, ISTL, and we have some pastors and some church people, but we have more of this kind of professionals. Just open-minded, and are really providing theology and education for these kinds of, they're serving their vocations. And I think this is one of the blessings we are experiencing right there. Thank you for your input and your sharing. Yeah.
Love to talk to you.
Could you repeat briefly the question for translation?
I don't have a mic. Did you hear this as translators? No.
Can you summarize the question, please? Greg, could you summarize the question then for the translation?
I think he was just commenting that in the school in Albania they have students who are working professionals, and this has been a great blessing. And that sometimes, if I understood correctly, there was a pastor of a small church who was needed to do something different than that, and that that this kind of program really would allow professionals to pursue the calling God has given them.
Thank you. I think there were 2 hands there, and then I saw one here. And then would you please?
Yeah. I'd just like to say thank you for your contribution, and especially to brother from Hungary. It was interesting to hear about broader thinking about way of teaching our Christian students. But I have one challenging question for all of church leaders and our teachers of Christian theological schools. Are you ever think about using leading scholars and intellectuals from other religion to help you in your Christian education? And in link with that, are you ever offered to other religion theological education to be their teacher of Christianity there?
So the question was the use of other scholars from other religious backgrounds?
Yes. Doctors of theology from Islamic Theological College in Sarajevo, did you ever think to use him to teach your students about Islam?
Who want to respond to that?
Yes, we do use them. For example, in Sarajevo. When I coordinate the subject of Introduction to Religions of Bosnia and Herzegovina, we have people from the original backgrounds in religious communities, actual doctors of theology there. And it's been a blessing. It's much better that students can hear them, what they think about themselves, and how do they, actually who they are, as opposed to evangelical opinion who they are. Thank you for the comment. It's very useful.
Well,
That's okay.
yeah, I think this is really very helpful and authentic to bring other scholars in. Thank you. Vic?
Yes, there is mine.
Oh, there is a mic.
Yes, we can use them. We have done this in Iraq. We developed good relationship with Chaldean Church or Catholic Church, and keep relationship. And we ask roundtable. It's not in the form of lecture, but free discussion with question and answer, interactive, and we benefit a lot. And also with Assyrian Orthodox and Nestorian Orthodox, because we Protestant, we are quite arrogant. We think we are the only one and all the knowledge is in our hand. It's totally not correct. The biggest success was with developing a relationship with Yazidi. Some of you maybe know what is Yazidi, what animal it is, as well. I'm still learning, but we learn. And we have huge numbers now as a result of friendship, born-again Yazidi people, not only in Iraq, but all over. And most of them coming from Shingal area. One of our teachers, about 15 years ago, started to do in liturgy subject, inviting Catholic priests and also Orthodox professors to help our students to get some knowledge, at least to be open. Some of you maybe notice that one of my friends who is here is making cross when he eat or pray. And you will not know, most of you, most of us, what is the meaning. But he knows and he is available to give you knowledge.
Thank you, Nick. I think I have Marcelo now, and then Marvin, and then yes, and then we have. Those are for now, and I think after that we may not have time for more questions. Sorry for that.
Yeah, I wrote a few thoughts down, and I just want to address the whole panel regarding that. It seems to me, from what happened last night and what we had in the morning, and now this discussion, that both church and seminary are faced with the same challenges in terms of social and cultural changes and the ecclesial identity that is being brought into question all the time at the moment, these years, and of course the pedagogical methodology. So I'm just wondering whether, in terms of a solution, and I think I've heard that in the panel already, whether we don't need to do at least 3 steps, I would say. Number one, to look at an enlarged scope for the education. Many of our schools seem to live under the impression that our purpose is just to prepare pastors or preachers, but probably an enlarged scope for the education is necessary, and I think that's what we'll be trying to do in Romania. And then in terms of, if we go there, we probably need to reformulate the content of our theological education, not necessarily to change it, but to present it in new ways. And I think that's where the public theology thing that we're trying to do has gone. And then one thing that just came to me now is, if you do those 2 steps, we probably need to look methodologically what we're doing, because traditionally theological methodology was rooted in philosophy. But within the new context, I think we need to look at social sciences and ethnography as being a place from which we So just as a comment, maybe somebody in the panel wants to.
The church and theological education are facing similar questions, and as I repeat and understand, it's really the issue of widening the scope. It is really the question of how does our content respond to this, and third, then the whole issue of methodology and philosophy. of education. And I don't know if someone wants to comment on this. Please. We have heard, as Marcel already said, some of that already from the panel, but maybe you want to add. This is an opportunity.
I would just briefly say one of the advantages of thinking about the idea that and what's actually being applied in different places is, I think one of the problems when you think about the curriculum changes, how do you have qualified teachers to teach those courses? So if we're engaging in more social science, that adds a whole new, right? Most of us don't have that kind of training, and if we want to be accredited, how do we bring those kind of qualified people in? So that becomes a problem. And so maybe some of these more non-traditional, non-formal, maybe this is the right terminology, Harry, that where we can provide the, sort of this idea of coming alongside people in those different areas could be helpful.
Someone else? Otherwise, Marvin, may I just give you a mic that I don't have to translate it?
Okay, thanks. Okay, I'm old enough to remember fondly the times when in church we would sing in 4-part harmony instead of just choruses. And in a way, as accreditation agencies, we try to harmonize off a song sheet with at least 4 different harmonies. And in the previous session, we were talking about the sopranos that were the church, and we try to listen to what the church is singing. We try to listen to the contraltos, which are what is happening in higher education, so the Bologna process and whatnot. We bring something of our own as accreditors. Most of us are trained in education, and in a sense we try to provide a baseline, similar to what Bernhard gave last night. But you are the tenors, the actual theological educators, and your prophetic vision of theological education is something that we as accreditation agencies need to listen to. And when you come to us for accreditation, often what you want is that rubber stamp that says your degree is not a mill, it's not a diploma mill, that you're a bona fide educational institution. What we bring, we would also like to serve you in a paracletic fashion, coming alongside you to help you fulfill your prophetic vision. So all that to ask my question, how can we as an accreditation agency help you better fulfill your prophetic vision as theological educators, sing tenors?
And maybe I should add to this, accreditation like EEAA is offering is one thing that the institution is offering. It's also helping and trying to help to develop those who have state accreditation. So think wider.
Yes.
Yes, please. Shall I give this for the translator, please? Okay, thanks.
Van némi tapasztalatom az akkreditációs bizottságnak, legalábbis a magyarországiaknak a munkájáról.
I have some experience concerning the work of accreditation agencies, at least in Hungary.
6 évet töltöttem el ebben a bizottságban.
I was a member of such an agency for 6 years.
És a Magyar Rektori Konferenciának a képviselőjeként.
As a representative of the Hungarian Rectors Conference of all universities.
Később is részt vettem ezeken az üléseken.
I have also participated later at the meetings of such a committee.
És a Magyar Parlamentnek az Oktatási Bizottságában.
And I also worked in the Education Committee of the Hungarian Parliament.
Állandó vita volt arról,
there was a continuous debate
hogyha egy állami elismertséget kap egy teológiai intézmény.
If a theological educational institution gets state recognition,
nem kerül-e olyan szellemi befolyások alá,
will it not come under such spiritual influences,
amelyek a hitvallását és a misszióját gyengítik,
which will compromise or weaken its confession of faith and its mission?
Ez Magyarországon még hatványozottabban vetődött föl.
In Hungary, this question came up in an even more forceful way.
Mert az akkreditált intézmények állami támogatásban részesülnek.
Because accredited educational institutions get government financial support.
Ezért tudunk például Európából angol nyelvű oktatásokra hallgatókat hívni.
This is why we can invite students from Europe to enroll in our English language course, the English language training course.
És nem kell a mesterszakon fizetniük.
And those who enroll for a master's degree don't have to pay anything.
Mert a magyar állam kifizeti az ő tandíjukat.
Because the Hungarian government pays for them.
Állandó probléma volt tehát.
So it has always been a problem.
Némelyek azt mondták az egyházban, hogy nem szabad ezt elfogadni.
Some within the union said we must not accept this.
Akik belülről láttuk ezt a kérdést,
but we who saw this question from the inside,
azok állandóan egyensúlyban igyekeztünk tartani.
We have tried to keep in balance
azt a jogszabályi előírást, hogy mire való az akkreditáció.
The legislation requirements of what accreditation is for.
A magyar felsőoktatási törvény szerint,
according to the Hungarian law on higher education,
az akkreditációs bizottság kizárólag az intézményi munkának az infrastrukturális feltételeit vizsgálhatja.
The accreditation agency is only entitled in Hungary to examine the infrastructural qualifications of the institution.
Nem szólhat bele az oktatásnak a tartalmába.
It cannot have any say as far as the content of what is being taught is concerned.
Nem szólhat bele az oktatóknak a minősítésébe.
It can have no say in the qualification of the teachers.
Ezek közül mi egyik elvet tartjuk.
Out of these, we keep to one of these principles.
Nem engedünk beleszólni, de nem is akarnak beleszólni a tanítás tartalmába.
We don't allow them to influence the content of our teaching, and they don't want to influence it.
A másikat nem tartjuk.
The other one we don't adhere to.
És az oktatók elvárt minőségét azt teljesítjük.
In other words, we meet the quality requirements for the teaching staff, the qualifications.
Mert ez hasznára van az oktatásnak.
Because this itself is of a good, with a good effect on the quality of teaching.
Úgy gondolom, hogyha bármely országban az akkreditációs bizottság ilyen keretek között dolgozik.
I think if in any of your countries your accreditation agency works within that framework, within those guidelines,
akkor azzal nincs különösebb probléma.
Then there should be no special problem with them.
Ha valahol esetleg ennél többet akarna beleszólni,
if they would want to involve themselves in other things as well,
azt minden iskolának meg fenntartójának el kell döntenie, hogy ezt ő vállalja vagy nem.
Then every school and every manager of the school or runner of the school has to decide whether they accept this additional interference or not.
Ez mindenkinek a saját felelősség.
This is everybody's own responsibility.
Köszönöm.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, there's a lot of space for more conversation, but no time. I wish I would be Joshua to stop the time. But even if I could stop the sun, the clock would continue. So we have two more. Can we still do that, or do we? Is it the holy ground? If we can have very short comments, maybe, and if you is that okay? Just
a comment, no question. I am curious, but not right now. What I was going to comment is that I'm coming at this conference in the invitation and the request of a couple friends of mine. They suggested it to me. I'm always eager to explore and to learn new things about this region, so here I am. I work as a missionary in Romania. My training and vocation has been in environmental science and forestry, so not in theology and not in theological education. So I come at this as an outsider. And what I learned over the last few hours since I arrived is that there's a disconnect and there's a discord between the theological schools, the churches, the congregations. It seems like we're talking about the challenges and the trends of what's happening, and there's We're talking about what is this connection? How are we so separate, etc. That's what I'm hearing. Okay, I'm an outsider, so this is all new. And here's the thing, I didn't know that. 55 years old next week. And I never knew that. Okay, so I would imagine that the majority of the people out there in the world, in this Balkan Peninsula, they don't know that there's this disconnect between the theological schools, training the pastors and the congregation. They don't know that, but they live under the effect of that, right? We don't know anything about the transportation industry, how they run those buses and those trams, do we? No, but we live under the effect of how they do their job. So all these people are living under the effect of how well we are connected together. And that's what that is my encouragement, that if you are all sitting here to talk about that one thing, that how can we begin to connect, then we are on the right track and you're doing a good thing. My question is, when we look at, it's not a question, it's kind of a rumination running through my mind. I wonder where did the disconnection begin? When did that happen? How did that start to separate and to move apart? If we think about agriculture, agri-industry and agribusiness produces farming in a way that no one 100 years ago would recognize today. 50,000 chickens, etc. No one would recognize that 100 years ago. So how did it change? And then how did this theological education change? And you guys go back to the sources, figure it out, find the answer, tell us about it. I'm excited about that. And thank you.
Thank you very much for all the insights. I think one of the players that we probably have still missed, that Ileana has reminded me when we came here, is actually there's another player that has an important role and we have missed to recognize this. This is the donors and the missionaries and their role, and they have been mentioned, and they have quite an impact on the unity and diversity of the institutions. So I hope as we will pick up this conversation, these issues, and some more to the tables as we go for lunch. This is another opportunity to continue the conversation. And in order that we continue the conversation, let me just pray first for that meal so that we can immediately start talking.